A weathered rancher carried one baby on his hip, another in his arms, stumbling through the desert heat toward a frontier town until a trembling black girl stepped from the shadows and whispered, "You're not alone." The townspeople gathered like vultures, their cruel whispers cutting through the dusty air, pointing at the sun-scorched drifter who'd surely get those innocent babes killed before sundown. Store owners slammed doors shut. The sheriff shook his head in disgust. Even the preacher turned away from this fool's errand. But the young servant girl watched from behind her master's door, her intelligent eyes recognizing something the others missed. She possessed knowledge that could save those children, knowledge that would cost her everything if discovered. Her bound hands trembled as she weighed an impossible choice. Remain safe in servitude, or risk her life for strangers who might be more connected to her than anyone could imagine. Would she find the courage to defy a world that demanded her silence? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. 3 days earlier, Jeb Thornton had been tracking wild mustangs across the New Mexico desert when the smoke caught his eye. Black columns rose against the azure sky like funeral pyres. He spurred his horse toward the distant homestead, knowing he'd find nothing good waiting. The Mitchell family lay scattered around their burned wagon. Raiders had taken everything of value and left the rest to the buzzards. Jeb had seen enough death during his cavalry years to know when to move on. He was turning away when he heard it, a soft whimper from beneath the overturned wagon. Sarah Mitchell had used her final moments to shield 2 infants with her body. Twin babies, maybe 6 months old, lay crying beneath their mother's protective embrace. The boy had stopped crying when Jeb pulled him free. The girl wailed with surprising strength. Jeb should have ridden away. He'd spent 2 years drifting across the territories, avoiding exactly this kind of responsibility. The war had taught him that caring meant losing. Getting attached meant watching good people die. But those tiny hands grasped his fingers with desperate trust. He fashioned a sling from torn fabric and loaded the babies onto his horse. The nearest town was Cottonwood Springs, 50 miles northeast. He'd find someone there to take them in. The desert had other plans. His horse collapsed on the second day, foam at its mouth, legs trembling from exhaustion and heat. Jeb put the animal out of its misery and shouldered his pack. The babies needed water every few hours. Milk would be better, but water kept them breathing. By the 3rd morning, Jeb's lips had cracked and his vision blurred. The male infant had grown quiet. Too quiet. The girl still cried, but weakly now. Jeb's shoulders screamed from carrying double weight, but he pushed forward 1 step at a time. Cottonwood Springs materialized like a mirage in the afternoon heat. Adobe buildings clustered around a central plaza. A church bell tower rose against the mountains. Salvation, if the town would have them. The first person to see him was Martha Henley, hanging laundry behind the general store. Her face twisted in disgust. "Lord have mercy. Look what the desert dragged in." Others gathered quickly. Frontier towns thrived on gossip, and Jeb made quite a spectacle. Dust-covered, unshaven, carrying 2 crying infants like some twisted peddler hawking his wares. "Them babies ain't his," someone whispered. "Probably stole them from decent folk. Man like that's got no business raising children." Jeb ignored the voices and headed for the general store. He needed milk, blankets, and supplies. The storekeeper, a heavy man with suspicious eyes, blocked his path. "We don't serve drifters here. I have money. Don't look like you got sense enough to spend it proper." The crowd grew larger. Women pulled their children closer. Men fingered their gun belts with casual menace. Jeb recognized the signs. He'd worn out his welcome before even asking for help. "There's an orphanage in Santa Fe," the sheriff said, appearing through the crowd. 200 miles south. That's where them babies belong. They need food now. Should have thought of that before you took on more than you could handle." The babies started crying again, their small voices cutting through the hostile murmurs. Jeb felt his strength ebbing. 3 days without proper sleep, minimal food and water. His legs shook with exhaustion. The doctor's office sat across the plaza, identified by a simple wooden sign. Jeb pushed through the crowd and climbed the steps. Maybe professional ethics would trump small-town prejudice. Dr. Whitmore answered his knock with barely concealed irritation. A thin man in his 50s. He looked at Jeb like something unpleasant tracked in on boot heels. "I don't treat charity cases. The babies need help. Then you should have left them where you found them. Nature has ways of solving these problems." The callousness hit Jeb harder than expected. He'd heard similar words from officers during the war. Good men died while cowards made excuses about natural selection and survival of the fittest. His knees buckled. The desert, the walking, the constant worry crashed over him at once. He collapsed on the doctor's porch. Babies clutched against his chest, their cries mixing with the cruel laughter from the street. Through blurred vision, he saw her. A young woman emerged from the doctor's house, African American, maybe 16, with intelligent eyes that took in the scene with quick understanding. She wore a simple dress and apron, marking her as household help. She glanced back at the doctor, who had already retreated inside. The crowd continued their commentary about foolish drifters and unwanted burdens. Nobody paid attention to the servant girl. She knelt beside Jeb and gently touched his shoulder. When she spoke, her voice carried quiet strength that cut through his despair. "You're not alone." The words unlocked something in Jeb's chest. For 3 days, he'd carried these babies across an endless desert, facing death and exhaustion and the crushing weight of responsibility. Everyone in this town saw him as a failure, a fool, a danger to innocent lives. But this girl saw something else entirely. She helped him sit up, her movements careful and sure. The babies stopped crying when she touched them, responding to her gentle confidence. Her eyes studied their faces with peculiar intensity, as if searching for something specific. "What are their names?" she asked softly. "Don't know. Found them with dead folks named Mitchell." Her face went completely still. The girl's hands trembled as she reached for the locket around the baby girl's neck. Jeb hadn't noticed it before, a small silver pendant hidden beneath the infant's blanket. She turned it over with reverent fingers, reading the inscription that made her breath catch. "Sarah and Thomas Mitchell," she whispered. Jeb studied her face, watching recognition dawn like sunrise after a long night. This wasn't curiosity. This was something deeper, more personal. "You knew them?" She closed her eyes, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. When she opened them again, her voice carried the weight of years of separation and loss. "They're my parents. These babies are my brother and sister." The words hit Jeb like a physical blow. He'd spent 3 days carrying her siblings across the desert while she served tea to the town doctor. The impossibility of it, the cruel coincidence, left him speechless. "My name is Eliza May Washington. I was sold into service 5 years ago when Papa couldn't pay his debts. Mama was pregnant then, but I never knew if the baby lived." She touched each infant's face with infinite tenderness. The resemblance became obvious once pointed out. The same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin, the same way they quieted at her touch. "There were 2 babies," Jeb said. "Twins, Ruth and Samuel, if Mama kept the names she always talked about." Dr. Whitmore's voice cut through their reunion like a rusty blade. "Eliza May, get away from that vagrant immediately." The doctor stood in his doorway, face flushed with anger at finding his servant consorting with undesirables. Behind him lurked 2 well-dressed men Jeb hadn't seen before. Town council members, judging by their expensive clothes and superior expressions. "The babies are sick," Eliza May said, not moving from Jeb's side. "They need immediate care." "They need to be removed from that drifter's custody," Dr. Whitmore replied. "Mr. Carlyle here represents a family in El Paso looking to adopt healthy infants. They'll pay handsomely for the privilege." Jeb's blood turned cold. He'd heard stories about child traders who haunted disaster sites, collecting orphans like valuable commodities. Wealthy families paid premium prices for babies young enough to forget their origins. "These children aren't for sale. You have no legal claim to them," Carlyle interjected smoothly. "Unmarried drifters make unsuitable guardians. The territorial judge will agree." Eliza May stood slowly, her servant's deference melting away like morning frost. Something fierce awakened in her posture, a strength that had been hidden beneath years of enforced submission. "I have claim to them. They're my blood." Dr. Whitmore laughed harshly. "Servants don't have legal standing. Your contract makes you property until your term expires. 3 more years, if I remember correctly." "Then I'll buy out her contract," Jeb said. "With what money? You couldn't afford supplies an hour ago." Jeb reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a leather pouch. Gold coins spilled into his palm, catching sunlight like fallen stars. His cavalry pension, saved over 2 years of frugal living, enough to start fresh somewhere, maybe buy a small ranch. Dr. Whitmore's eyes widened with naked greed. That's barely enough to cover her remaining term, plus room and board, plus medical training she's received. "The babies are dying," Eliza May said urgently. "Samuel has the family condition. His breathing is wrong. Ruth will develop it too if we don't treat them soon." She knelt beside the infants, her trained hands checking their pulse and temperature with professional skill. Jeb realized this wasn't servant girl playing at medicine. She possessed genuine knowledge. "How do you know about doctoring?" "I've been studying Dr. Whitmore's books for 5 years, learning everything I could." Her voice carried quiet pride. "I can read Latin medical texts. I know more about anatomy than most frontier doctors." Dr. Whitmore's face purpled with rage. "You had no permission to access my library. You never forbade it. Theft of knowledge is still theft." Eliza May ignored him, focusing entirely on the babies. She lifted Samuel's tiny shirt, revealing the subtle blue tinge around his lips that marked oxygen deficiency. Her fingers found specific pressure points along his chest, applying gentle massage that immediately eased his labored breathing. "The Mitchell family carries a genetic weakness in lung development. I know how to treat it because I have it too. See?" She demonstrated breathing techniques that expanded her chest capacity, showing how she'd learned to manage her own condition. The baby boy's color improved within minutes. Without proper care, both babies will die within days. With it, they'll live normal lives. Carlyle stepped forward, gold coins dancing in his vision. "I'll double my offer to include hiring you as their caretaker. The El Paso family needs a nursemaid anyway." "No." The word carried absolute finality. Eliza May stood and faced the 3 men with devastating calm. "I won't watch my siblings sold to strangers. I won't spend my life caring for my own blood while pretending they belong to someone else." Dr. Whitmore grabbed her arm roughly. "You'll do as you're told, girl. Your contract gives me authority over every aspect of your life." "Then I break my contract." The declaration stunned everyone into silence. Breaking an indentured servant contract meant prison. Possibly years of hard labor. For someone like Eliza May, it meant destroying any chance of a legitimate future. Jeb understood her choice perfectly. He'd made similar decisions during the war, choosing principle over safety, humanity over survival. It usually ended badly, but some things mattered more than personal welfare. "If you're breaking your contract anyway," he said quietly, "come with me. Help me get your siblings to safety." "Where?" "Santa Fe. Find proper families there who'll treat them right." Eliza May looked at the babies, then at the greedy faces surrounding them. Her decision crystallized with mathematical precision. "We leave tonight." Midnight came with desert silence broken only by coyote calls echoing off distant mountains. Eliza May moved through Dr. Whitmore's house like a ghost, gathering medical supplies with practiced stealth, bandages, laudanum, fever powders, and most importantly, the special herbal mixture her grandmother had taught her to make for family breathing troubles. She left a letter on the kitchen table, written in careful script that would surprise anyone who thought servants couldn't read. "Dr. Whitmore, I take full responsibility for my actions. The babies are my blood kin, and I will not see them sold. What supplies I have taken will be repaid when I am able. Eliza May Washington." Jeb waited at the town's edge with the twins bundled against the night chill. He'd traded his remaining gold for a mule, basic provisions, and information about the safest route to Santa Fe. 200 miles through hostile territory, but preferable to facing Carlisle's child traders. "You sure about this?" he asked as Eliza May approached. "Been sure my whole life, just never had the chance to act on it." They headed south under star-bright skies, following ancient trading paths that predated the territory's official roads. Eliza May proved invaluable immediately, identifying landmarks her parents had described during her childhood: water sources, shelter spots, dangerous areas to avoid. The first 3 days passed without incident. They traveled at night when temperatures dropped and the babies slept easier. During daylight hours, they rested in whatever shade they could find. Eliza May's medical knowledge kept the twins healthy despite harsh conditions. On the fourth morning, dust clouds appeared on the northern horizon. "Riders coming fast," Jeb observed, studying the distant shapes through his spyglass. 6 men, armed. Dr. Whitmore had posted his bounty quickly. $50 for Eliza May's return, $25 for the babies. Enough money to motivate every fortune hunter within 100 miles. "We can't outrun them with the mule," Eliza May said. Jeb's cavalry training kicked in automatically. He studied the terrain with tactical eyes, noting defensive positions and escape routes. A narrow canyon cut through the hills to their east. Dangerous Apache territory, but bounty hunters wouldn't follow them there. "Can you handle rough ground?" "Better than I can handle chains." They pushed the mule hard, reaching the canyon entrance as their pursuers crested the nearest ridge. Jeb recognized the lead rider, Tom Bradley, a former Army scout who'd turned to bounty hunting after the war ended. A good tracker, but not particularly brave when facing real danger. The canyon walls rose like cathedral spires, blocking out most of the sky. Ancient pictographs marked Apache sacred sites. This wasn't just dangerous territory. It was forbidden ground for white travelers. "They won't follow us here," Jeb said. "What about Apache? Rather face warriors with honor than bounty hunters with none." The canyon floor wound deeper into the mountains, following a dry stream bed that might hold water during spring floods. Now it offered only rocks and thorny brush that tore at their clothes. The mule struggled with uneven footing. By midday, baby Ruth began showing signs of distress. Her breathing grew labored, lips taking on the blue tinge that marked the family condition. Eliza May called an immediate halt. "She needs treatment now." They found shelter beneath an overhang while Eliza May worked her medical magic. She mixed herbs with precious water, creating a steam tent using blankets and heated rocks. The aromatic vapor opened Ruth's airways within minutes. "Learned this from my grandmother," she explained while monitoring the baby's breathing. "She treated 3 generations of family lung troubles before passing the knowledge to me." Jeb watched her work with growing respect. This wasn't luck or instinct. Eliza May possessed genuine medical expertise that rivaled any frontier doctor. Her gentle hands and precise movements spoke of years studying human anatomy and physiology. "Why didn't you become a real doctor? Women can't attend medical school, especially women who look like me." The simple statement carried layers of frustrated ambition. Jeb had known brilliant soldiers during the war who were denied promotion because of their background. Waste of talent that weakened everyone. Thunder rumbled overhead, promising the desert's rare but violent storms. They needed better shelter before rain turned the canyon into a death trap. Flash floods killed more travelers than Apache raids in this country. "There's a cave system ahead," Eliza May said, consulting mental maps passed down through family stories. "Mama used to tell me about hiding places her people used during hard times." The caves proved exactly as described, deep enough to stay dry, high enough to avoid floodwaters, with multiple exits in case of trouble. Ancient fire rings showed generations of travelers had sheltered here. They settled in as rain began falling in sheets. The storm hit with typical desert fury, turning the sky black and sending torrents of water cascading down canyon walls. The dry stream bed became a raging river within minutes. Ruth's condition worsened despite treatment. The storm's pressure changes affected her breathing, making each breath a struggle. Samuel showed early symptoms too, his small chest working harder than it should. Eliza May worked through the night, applying every technique her grandmother had taught her. Steam treatments, chest massage, herbal teas administered drop by drop. Jeb kept watch and tended the fire, feeling helpless in the face of medical crisis. "They're not responding," Eliza May admitted as dawn approached. "The altitude and pressure changes are making everything worse. They need a different treatment, something I can't provide here." "What do they need?" "Lower altitude, stable environment. And honestly, they need my Aunt Clara in Santa Fe. She's the only other person who knows all the family remedies." The storm passed as suddenly as it arrived, leaving behind crystalline air and impossible blue skies. But Ruth's breathing remained labored, and Samuel was beginning to show the same distress. "How far to Santa Fe?" Jeb asked. 2 days if we push hard, maybe 3 with the babies this sick. Then we push hard." They loaded their gear and headed deeper into the mountains, racing against time and their own limitations. Behind them, the bounty hunters had surely regrouped. Ahead lay the territorial capital and the hope of family reunion. The twins' lives hung in the balance. Santa Fe sprawled across the valley like a collection of adobe jewels, its plaza bustling with merchants and travelers from across the territory. Church bells rang the hour as Jeb and Eliza May descended from the mountains, their mule exhausted and the babies clinging to life through sheer will and Eliza May's constant care. The city offered anonymity that frontier towns couldn't provide. Faces from dozens of cultures mixed in the streets. Spanish, Mexican, Anglo, Native American, and African American residents created a tapestry complex enough to hide 2 fugitives and their precious cargo. "Aunt Clara lives on Guadalupe Street," Eliza May said, consulting directions scrawled on paper years old. "At least, she did when she last wrote." They found the address easily enough. A modest adobe house with wooden shutters and a small garden showing recent care. Hope flickered in Eliza May's chest as she knocked on the weathered door. An elderly Mexican woman answered, her kind face creasing with confusion at the sight of strangers holding babies. "I'm looking for Clara Washington," Eliza May said. "Ah, poor Clara. She passed 2 months ago. Very peaceful, in her sleep." The words hit like physical blows. Their destination, their hope, their entire plan crumbled in an instant. Eliza May's shoulders sagged under the weight of crushing disappointment. She was my aunt. These are her great-nephew and niece. The woman's expression shifted to sympathy mixed with surprise. "You are Eliza May? The niece from the East? You knew about me?" "Clara spoke of you often, worried constantly. Come inside, please." The house smelled of sage and memories. Clara Washington had lived simply but comfortably, her furniture well-maintained and her walls decorated with family photographs that included a younger version of Eliza May. "Your aunt left instructions," the woman continued. "My name is Maria Santos. Clara made me promise to help if her family ever came looking." She disappeared into a back room and returned with a wooden box sealed with wax. Legal documents showed through the transparent covering, along with what appeared to be a substantial amount of money. She visited the lawyer every month, updating her will. Always said family would come someday needing help. Eliza May broke the seal with trembling fingers. The first document made her gasp audibly. A bank statement showing an account balance that dwarfed anything she'd imagined possible. "Aunt Clara struck silver 3 years ago," Maria explained. "Small claim up in the mountains, but pure ore. She sold it to a mining company for more money than most people see in a lifetime." The will was written in Clara's careful handwriting, every word chosen with precision. "To my beloved niece, Eliza May Washington, when she comes of age or gains her freedom, whichever occurs first. All my worldly possessions, including house, funds, and mining rights, with one condition, that she establish a school for underprivileged children within 1 year of inheritance." Jeb watched emotions play across Eliza May's face like weather patterns. Shock, joy, overwhelming possibility, and then the crushing weight of responsibility. Wealth meant options, but it also meant expectations. "There's more," Maria said gently. "Legal papers that might interest you." The second set of documents contained a territorial judge's ruling on indentured servant contracts. Clara had spent considerable money challenging the legality of extended servitude, particularly contracts that exceeded their original terms or were used to exploit workers. Your aunt researched your situation thoroughly. Dr. Whitmore's contract with you expired 6 months ago, according to territorial law. He's been keeping you illegally. The revelation staggered Eliza May completely. She'd been free for months without knowing it. Dr. Whitmore had continued her servitude through deception and intimidation, banking on her ignorance of legal technicalities. I could have left any time? With proper documentation, yes. Heavy footsteps on the porch interrupted their discussion. Maria peered through the shutters and her face went pale. Men with badges. They look official. Dr. Whitmore had arrived with territorial authorities, his bounty hunters replaced by legitimate law enforcement. Through the window, Jeb counted 6 men, including a federal marshal, whose presence elevated this from local dispute to serious legal matter. Dr. Whitmore claims you kidnapped his indentured servant and stole valuable medical supplies, the marshal called through the door. We have warrants for both your arrests. Eliza May clutched the legal documents that proved her freedom, but paper meant nothing if they couldn't present it properly. In jail, Dr. Whitmore could manipulate the situation to his advantage. The babies might be seized and sold before any trial occurred. What do we do? She whispered. Maria Santos stepped forward with quiet determination. You fight, but you fight smart with lawyers and law, not with running and hiding. We need legal representation, Jeb said. I know someone, Samuel Rodriguez. He's been challenging territorial injustices for years. Your aunt hired him several times. The marshal's patience was wearing thin. Open this door immediately or we'll break it down. Maria moved to comply, but Eliza May stopped her. The young woman who'd spent 5 years in servitude, who'd been taught to submit and obey, straightened her spine and found her voice. We're coming out voluntarily, she called. But I demand to speak with a lawyer before answering any questions. Servants don't get lawyers. I'm not a servant. I'm a free woman with legal documentation proving my status. She stepped onto the porch, holding Clara's papers like shields against injustice. Dr. Whitmore's face twisted with rage when he saw the inheritance documents, realizing his profitable arrangement was crumbling. Those papers are forgeries, he sputtered. This girl is my legal property for 3 more years. Eliza May met his gaze with steel in her voice. I stopped being anyone's property the day I was born free, and now I have the means to prove it. The federal marshal studied the documents with growing interest. Legal challenges to territorial servitude laws were becoming common, and smart lawmen recognized when they were stepping into political quicksand. We'll sort this out at the courthouse, he decided. Everyone's coming with us, but nobody's going to jail until we determine the facts. As they walked toward the territorial courthouse, Eliza May felt the weight of possibility settling on her shoulders. Wealth meant power. Power meant the ability to fight injustice instead of enduring it. The real battle was just beginning. The territorial courthouse buzzed with unusual energy as word spread about the case that would challenge fundamental assumptions about servitude and freedom. Samuel Rodriguez arrived within hours, a sharp-eyed lawyer whose reputation for fighting injustice preceded him into every courtroom. Dr. Whitmore has been operating illegally for years, Rodriguez explained during their first meeting. Your case could free dozens of people trapped in expired contracts. The hearing drew spectators from across Santa Fe. Progressive citizens who supported legal reform sat beside conservative ranchers who depended on indentured labor. The babies had been placed in temporary care with Maria Santos while the adults fought over their future. Judge Harrison presided with the weariness of a man who'd seen too many lives destroyed by legal technicalities. He studied the documents with careful attention, comparing contract dates against territorial statutes that most frontier lawyers ignored. Dr. Whitmore explained how Miss Washington's original 5-year contract extends to 8 years. Room, board, medical training, and disciplinary costs, Dr. Whitmore replied smoothly. Standard practice for servants who require additional investment. Show me the territorial law that permits contract extensions for training costs. Dr. Whitmore's lawyer shuffled through papers with growing desperation. No such law existed because Clara Washington's legal research had been thorough. She'd identified the exact loopholes that unscrupulous employers used to trap workers indefinitely. Rodriguez presented evidence systematically, bank records showing Dr. Whitmore had collected fees for training other servants beyond their contract terms, testimonials from former workers who'd been kept years longer than legally required, financial documents proving he'd profited significantly from extended labor. Your Honor, this isn't isolated misconduct. This is systematic exploitation of legal ignorance. The courtroom stirred as the scope of Dr. Whitmore's deception became clear. He'd built his comfortable lifestyle by stealing years from people who trusted the system to protect them. Eliza May took the witness stand with quiet dignity that impressed even skeptical observers. Her testimony revealed the depth of medical knowledge she'd acquired through years of dedicated study. I can diagnose respiratory conditions, set broken bones, and perform emergency surgery when necessary, she said. Dr. Whitmore relied on my skills for his most difficult cases, but never acknowledged my contributions. Did he pay you for this medical work? Servants don't receive wages, but I saved lives he would have lost through negligence or ignorance. Rodriguez produced a ledger showing Dr. Bray. Whitmore had charged premium rates for medical procedures actually performed by Eliza May. The evidence painted a picture of systematic fraud that went beyond simple contract violations. Jebb's testimony focused on the baby's rescue and the desperate journey to Santa Fe. His military bearing and straightforward answers impressed the judge, but the real impact came when he described Eliza May's life-saving medical interventions. Without her knowledge, both children would have died in the desert. She possesses healing skills that rival any trained physician I've encountered. Dr. Whitmore's defense crumbled under scrutiny. His lawyer attempted character assassination, suggesting that former servants were unreliable witnesses motivated by revenge. But the financial evidence spoke louder than personal attacks. Miss Washington was a valuable investment, Dr. Whitmore argued desperately. Training her required significant resources that justified extended service. Training that benefited you more than her, Judge Harrison observed. Training that you concealed from territorial authorities and used to defraud patients who believed they were receiving treatment from a licensed physician. The turning point came when Rodriguez presented Clara Washington's final legal challenge. She documented similar cases across 3 territories, building an ironclad argument against contract manipulation that would protect future workers. Clara Washington spent her final years and considerable fortune fighting this exact injustice, Rodriguez told the court. Her niece inherits not just wealth, but a legal obligation to continue that fight. Judge Harrison studied the inheritance documents with particular interest. Educational requirements written into Clara's will demonstrated serious intent to address systemic problems through legitimate channels. Miss Washington, what do you intend to do with this inheritance? Establish a school that serves all children regardless of background. Provide education that empowers people to recognize and resist legal exploitation. And the babies? They're my family. I'll raise them with love and ensure they receive every opportunity denied to their sister. The judge's decision came after 2 hours of deliberation that felt like days. Dr. Whitmore sat rigid with barely controlled rage, while Eliza May maintained composure despite trembling hands. The evidence clearly shows systematic violation of territorial statutes governing indentured servitude. Miss Washington's contract expired 6 months ago, making her detention illegal imprisonment. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Illegal imprisonment carried serious criminal penalties that could destroy Dr. Whitmore's career and reputation. Furthermore, this court finds evidence of medical fraud, contract manipulation, and exploitation of workers' legal ignorance. Dr. Whitmore will face additional charges in territorial court. The judge turned to Eliza May with something approaching respect. Miss Washington, this court recognizes your legal freedom and legitimate inheritance. You have full custody of your siblings and complete authority over your aunt's estate. Victory tasted sweeter than Eliza May had imagined. not just personal freedom, but vindication for every servant who'd suffered under similar exploitation. Dr. Whitmore's empire of deception collapsed in a single afternoon. Outside the courthouse, townspeople approached with mixture of curiosity and respect. Some offered congratulations. Others promised support for her educational plans. A few former servants thanked her for exposing the truth that freed them too. "What happens now?" Jeb asked as they walked toward Maria Santos's house where the babies waited. "Now we build something better, a school that teaches people to recognize their worth and fight for their rights." She looked at the courthouse where justice had finally prevailed through law rather than violence. Clara's legacy would live on through education and empowerment rather than bitterness and revenge. And we raise Ruth and Samuel to know they're loved, valued, and capable of changing the world. The legal victory was complete, but the real work of transformation was just beginning. 6 months later, the Washington School for All Children occupied a sprawling adobe building on the outskirts of Santa Fe. Eliza May had used Clara's inheritance wisely, purchasing land and constructing classrooms that welcomed students regardless of background, color, or family circumstances. The territorial governor himself had attended the dedication ceremony, praising the school's progressive approach to education. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows as 23 children settled into their seats. Mexican, Anglo, African American, and Native American faces reflected the diversity that made Santa Fe unique among frontier settlements. At the front of the classroom, Eliza May Washington commanded attention with quiet authority that belied her 18 years. "Today we study the territorial laws that protect all citizens," she announced, holding up legal documents that looked identical to those that had secured her freedom. "Knowledge of your rights is the most powerful tool you'll ever possess." Jeb Thornton watched from the doorway, a smile creasing his weathered features. He'd traded his drifter's existence for steady work as the school's groundskeeper and protector. His cavalry training proved invaluable for maintaining order and ensuring student safety in a region where tensions sometimes flared between different communities. Ruth and Samuel played in a corner designated for the school's youngest attendees. Both toddlers showed no signs of the breathing troubles that had nearly killed them in the desert. Eliza May's medical knowledge, combined with stable living conditions, had overcome their hereditary weakness completely. "Miss Washington," called 10-year-old Carlos Martinez, whose parents had initially opposed integrated education. "My father says learning too much makes servants uppity. Is that true?" Eliza May's response carried the weight of hard-won experience. "Learning makes people free. Some folks fear freedom because it threatens their power over others." She moved between desks with practiced ease, checking arithmetic problems and offering gentle corrections. Her teaching methods emphasized practical skills alongside academic subjects. Students learned to read legal contracts, calculate fair wages, and write formal letters that commanded respect. Maria Santos entered carrying lunch baskets prepared by mothers who'd gradually embraced the school's mission. Former skeptics had become supporters after witnessing their children's rapid progress under Eliza May's instruction. "Mrs. Rodriguez wants to know if you'll teach evening classes for adults," Maria announced. "Her husband's workers are interested in learning basic reading. We'll start next week." The school had become more than an educational institution. It served as a community center where different cultures mixed naturally, breaking down barriers that had separated Santa Fe's residents for generations. Eliza May's vision of empowerment through knowledge was transforming the entire region. During afternoon recess, Jeb supervised playground activities while keeping watch for potential trouble. Dr. Whitmore had left the territory following his legal disgrace, but other opponents of integrated education occasionally made threatening gestures. Nothing serious had materialized, but vigilance remained essential. "Mr. Jeb," called 8-year-old Sarah Blackwood, "will you tell us another cavalry story?" "Maybe later. Right now you should practice your letters like Miss Washington taught you." The children gathered around regardless, drawn by tales of adventure that always contained moral lessons about courage, honor, and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Jeb had discovered an unexpected talent for teaching through storytelling. Inside the classroom, Eliza May worked with older students on advanced mathematics and territorial history. Her own education had continued through correspondence with Eastern universities, whose progressive professors supported her educational mission. Several had offered scholarships for promising students when they reached appropriate age. "Miss Washington," interrupted a breathless messenger who'd ridden hard from town. "Judge Harrison wants to see you immediately. Says it's urgent." Concern flickered across Eliza May's face. Legal troubles seemed unlikely given their solid victory months earlier, but frontier justice could be unpredictable when economic interests were threatened. She dismissed classes early and rode into town with Jeb, leaving the babies in Maria's capable care. The courthouse steps bustled with unusual activity for midweek afternoon. Lawyers, government officials, and curious citizens created an atmosphere of anticipation. Judge Harrison waited in his chambers with documents spread across his desk like battle plans. His expression mixed satisfaction with something approaching amazement. "Miss Washington, I have news that will interest you greatly." He handed her an official territorial proclamation bearing the governor's seal. The document authorized expansion of integrated education programs throughout New Mexico, with the Washington School designated as the model institution. Furthermore, the territorial legislature has allocated funds for teacher training. They want you to establish similar schools in other settlements. The opportunity exceeded Eliza May's wildest dreams. Clara's vision of systematic change through education could spread across the entire territory, touching thousands of lives previously trapped by ignorance and exploitation. "There's more," Judge Harrison continued. "The federal government has taken notice. They're considering your methods for implementation in other territories seeking statehood." Jeb felt pride swell in his chest as he watched Eliza May absorb the magnitude of what they'd accomplished. The frightened servant girl who'd whispered comfort to a desperate stranger had become a recognized leader whose influence stretched far beyond Santa Fe's borders. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Keep doing exactly what you're doing. The results speak for themselves." They rode back to the school as sunset painted the mountains gold and crimson. Students had gone home, but their presence lingered in carefully arranged desks, completed assignments, and artwork decorating the walls. Ruth toddled toward them with arms outstretched, chattering in the mixed English and Spanish that reflected their multicultural environment. Samuel followed close behind, his strong lungs producing delighted squeals at their return. "Hard to believe it all started with me carrying 2 babies across the desert," Jeb mused. "It started with you choosing to save them instead of walking away." Eliza May gathered her siblings close, remembering that desperate moment when a collapsed stranger had needed hope more than criticism. Her whispered words had changed 3 lives irrevocably, but the ripple effects were reshaping an entire territory. Evening brought new arrivals at the school's entrance. A weathered rancher carried an infant while his wife supported a limping horse. Their faces showed the exhaustion and desperation that marked refugees from some distant tragedy. "We heard you help folks in need," the man called uncertainly. Eliza May and Jeb exchanged knowing looks. Their work was expanding in directions they'd never anticipated, but the core mission remained unchanged. Every person deserved dignity, opportunity, and the chance to build something better than what they'd inherited. "You're not alone," Eliza May said, stepping forward to welcome the newest members of their extended family.